Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the New Construction Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Anya Chrysanthon, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today, Molly White. Molly is Digital Strategist with ONeil Interactive, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today, Molly. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is kind of the first non-ONeil Interactive Zoom that I have participated in, or not Zoom, I guess it's a podcast and video. So thank you. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to talking about the numbers.
Yay. So, you guys, to give you a little bit of a backstory. Oh, actually, before we get into the backstory, Molly, why don't you start off by introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your path has been to get to where you are now, and what's your role at ONeil Interactive.
Sure. So I'm a digital strategist at ONeil. I've been here for 4 years and I absolutely love it. It is so fun. I come from an agency background. I've been in digital marketing for the last 13 years. I had my own company for a little bit, but the difference with ONeil and the thing that makes it so great is that it is a home builder niche. So not only do I get to be in my digital marketing niche, but then I get to become an expert in one vertical, which makes it even more fun to do what I do because I feel like it lets me be just absolutely the best that I can be in one particular area, which makes it fun for me. So yeah, that's it.
Yes, talk about specialized, right?
Right.
And Molly, why don't you tell us a little bit more about ONeil Interactive? What do you guys do?
Sure. So ONeil Interactive has been around for this is our 11th year. Dennis O'Neill started it, and it is a full service web design and marketing agency for home builders. And we actually also help senior living facilities and apartment complexes, property management places as well. But our main focus is on home builders. We have a proprietary website platform called Homefinity, which was built specifically with home builders in mind, so that it is functions in a way on the front end that is very user friendly to people looking to buy new homes, and on the back end it's very user friendly to builders, speaking in terms and lingo and designed and organized in a way that makes sense to them.
Yes, yes. And it's all about making it easy, right? These days,
Yes.
customers are expecting everything to be easy. And so, you guys, I was scrolling the Instagram like most of us do, and I came across a post from ONeil Interactive. And it's a post of a benchmark that they've recently, I guess you would say, collected or
Mhm.
compiled from all the data that they have working with different home builders, and it's all about the what the experience is like on the home builder's website. So, Molly, would you mind giving us a little bit of a, I guess, background to this benchmark? Like, how many builders did you look at, and like, what really did you guys look at as far as numbers
Sure.
go?
So I decided that this was going to be the year that we produced our own benchmarks, because as someone in the digital marketing field, you always want benchmarks for how is your website performing? How are your ads performing? You want to know, like, is this good? Your clients ask, is this good? Is this number what we're looking for? Is this where we're supposed to be? And I went searching and couldn't find any numbers for specifically for our niche. The best I could come up with was real estate as a whole from WordStream as it pertained to digital marketing benchmarks. And then I hadn't really seen any website benchmarks either. So over the last 18 months to 2 years, I've been publishing quarterly digital marketing results. And then since the pandemic began, we started amassing data going back to 2019 for a variety of our clients and people on the Homefinity platform, and looking at that data when it pertains to websites. So I felt confident that after 2 years of looking at the data and compiling the data, that we could say, okay, these are the benchmarks, these are the numbers that we're trying to beat when it comes to our clients, and when it comes to numbers, this is what we want to hold up as the level. So I took all of 2020 and found the average for a couple of things that we look at when we're looking at performance. I didn't give all the numbers that, I mean, when you're in Google Analytics, there's a ton of information to be had out there. but there are kind of like 5 or 6 key indicators that you're looking at to figure out the performance of your website, but also how your digital marketing is performing when it comes to traffic on your website.
Love it. Okay. So, and then to give us again a little bit of a backdrop, how many builders would you say that you guys service so that this benchmark is accrued from, X amount of case studies?
Yep. It's more than several dozen website or builders, and it's from all across the country. So it's not necessarily just the Mid-Atlantic. We have builder clients all across the country that are either clients through marketing or clients through web design.
Great, great. And is there a particular size of a builder that you guys tend to gravitate, or,
It's
if
all different sizes too. We really wanted to kind of be a true cross section. So from small local builders to huge, huge builders that build in multiple markets across the country.
Okay, great. All right. So you mentioned that there were kind of 5 or 6 indicators that jumped out at you. So why don't you walk us through and tell us kind of what was the big picture like, and then we'll dive into some of those individuals.
So the first thing that people ask, especially because I'm on the strategy and the marketing side of things, the first thing our clients ask us is, "What's the conversion rate? How should we be converting? What should we be looking at in terms of lead generation from our website?" And so the way that we set up our marketing efforts and the way that we set up our website clients is that we take a few key indicators of conversions and set them up as goals in Google Analytics. So when somebody submits a form on a community, on a spec, on a plan page, or if they go to the general contact page and they submit a form, that's a goal, that's a lead. If somebody clicks to call, clicks to email, clicks to chat nowadays, clicks to schedule an appointment, anything that shows interest in furthering the conversation and really moving into the pipeline and getting into your CRM, that is measured as a goal, and that's what we're looking at for conversion rate. So that was number one. And then the next is when you're sending traffic to a website, you send top of funnel traffic who may have never heard of you before. And then you send middle of funnel and you send bottom of funnel where they are really converting. And so, what does that look like on your website? How do they behave? Are they visiting multiple pages? Are they spending a lot of time? Are they leaving really soon? What kind of actions are they taking? Are they clicking on images? What's happening, and how are they using the website? And so the average across those behaviors kind of lets you have a snapshot of how your website's being used and if it's effective at driving sales.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so why don't we start with conversion rates? Because obviously it's important to have not only a website that's visually appealing and pretty, but most importantly, your website should really be almost like a salesperson and in getting you those leads. So let's talk leads. What were some of the goals, and how many builders came close to those goals? Or like, what are we looking at?
So the average benchmark that you're looking for is 1 to 2%. And that's a pretty wide margin when you're talking percentages. And that is set up that way on purpose because, like I said, top of funnel traffic is generally not clicking to call, clicking to email. They have probably never heard of your brand before, and they're just looking on your website to get an idea for who you are. So that's going to have a far lower than 1% conversion rate. That conversion rate might only be 0.5%. But then when you talk about that more qualified traffic, some of your paid search traffic, something like that, that's where you're going to get closer to that 2% conversion rate. And that's the average that we see really across the board. And for us, when we're measuring our digital marketing efforts, we generally fall in the as you move to the bottom of funnel traffic, we're generally hitting the 1.5 to 2% conversion rate. And sometimes we see somebody that's really killing it and getting like a 2.5% conversion rate. So we do see that is the norm, that 1 to 2%. So we are hitting those numbers.
Great. And for those listeners who may not be as familiar with the whole digital marketing side of things and funnels, can you quickly define the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel for us?
Sure thing. So we talk funnels all day long. That's the most important part of designing a digital marketing campaign, and it's because of the way that you are able to target people online like never before. So the top of funnel traffic is that first introduction. It's a billboard. It's a traditional radio spot. It's getting your name in front of in front of a potential buyer's eyes before they even know that they're a potential buyer. So they've never heard of you. They might not even actually fully be looking to buy a home, but when the time comes and they're ready, your brand will be top of mind because they've seen ads from you before. So that's like a first introduction. And then middle of funnel is that warmer traffic, where they have some familiarity, they know who you are, they're in the research phase, perhaps they're looking at different builders, they're trying to learn, they're trying to get as much information as possible. And then that bottom of funnel traffic are people who are seriously committed to buying a home and are willing to reach out and touch someone and say, hey, I want to talk to you more about this process. I really want to make a move here. So that's a hot lead. That is that's the what you want at the end of the day. And so at the top of the funnel, you've got a lot of traffic that you're siphoning in. You'll see your session data will be super, super high on top of funnel campaigns. And then all your metrics are going to be really, really low in terms of time they spend on site and things that they're doing on the site and conversion rates. And then as you move down to that bottom of funnel traffic, you'll see far fewer people coming in from bottom of funnel efforts, but a much higher rate of conversion there. So and then that's where you're going to see much higher time on site, more activities being taken, more pages being visited, the really engaged user.
hmm Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper. So you mentioned that you guys measured goals. So in terms of what actions people take on the website when they become a lead. So you mentioned if they click a call button, if they submit maybe a request for an appointment, maybe if they submit their information for some type of a like a magnet or useful information to download a brochure or something like that. Do you have any idea for like when you're having those conversations with builders and obviously you're suggesting, okay, we really want to make sure that we do have a way for people to submit this information so that we can follow up with them and turn them into buyers. What tends to work the best? Is it call us? Is it chat with us? What are you seeing that you're getting the most conversions on?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. And it's all the things. So you want to make sure that you provide as many opportunities as possible for people to convert in as many ways as possible. Because, for example, I might be really comfortable clicking to chat or to schedule a video call. This is a comfortable forum for me, but submitting a form might seem like a really high ask, and I'm not comfortable giving you all my contact information quite yet. I just want to ask a few questions, and then that's it, and kind of walk away. So you want to make sure that you're catching people at all their comfort levels. And also, when we set these up as goals, you weigh them differently. You assign a dollar amount to them, basically, because they each have a little bit of a different weight. Like somebody who's willing to fill out a form and go the distance is a more engaged lead than somebody who's just clicking to chat or clicking to call. So they have different weights, and they have different it's different levels of importance, but you want to give them all the options, and you want to think about the mobile version of your website before you think about the desktop version of your website. So you want to make sure that there is an easy way for somebody to contact you and that it's very clear and above the fold on both mobile and desktop, because that's the end game, is the contact. So you want to give them multiple opportunities to do that.
Mhm. So speaking of mobile, we know that majority of people are coming to your website on mobile device. Do you have the latest data as to what percentage is mobile versus desktop?
So oftentimes you'll see higher than 50% of your traffic is mobile versus desktop overall. And then again, depending on the main drivers of traffic to your site, you'll see different levels of mobile versus desktop. So, for example, on most of our Facebook and Google campaigns, a large portion of that traffic is mobile traffic. Sometimes you can see it as high as 70%, because those are mobile first activities for the most part. So that's what you'll see there, as opposed to sometimes when we do external email blasts and we use an outside company, which is more top of funnel traffic, we'll see a really high desktop number there. Many more of those people are opening their emails on a desktop for whatever reason. So it really depends, but the average is roughly 50% of traffic is going to be mobile.
Wow, that's interesting. I would have assumed that it would have been higher on mobile than 50% even. And I can imagine that a lot of those browsing sessions take place like late at night, and maybe when you're already to the point where you've narrowed it down to a few different builders that you're interested in, that's maybe when you actually go to desktop to really get a big picture instead of just kind of preliminary search information on your phone. uh, but I don't know if you have
So
any views on that.
it's an interesting split. And actually, if you look at the session data and split it out by mobile and desktop, you'll see that on the weekends the mobile spikes and the desktop declines because people aren't at work anymore
Mhm.
in front of their computers. And especially now because of the pandemic, we're all working at home. We're in front of our desktops at home all day long. So a lot of people are doing that research on their desktop while they're working. It's their 10-minute break to go and look up some home information and then get back to the business of business. So you do actually see a fair amount of desktop traffic. And then like I said, there is also mobile traffic, and there's definitely spikes based on user behavior and what people are doing. So in the evening, if you break it down by times, you'll see more mobile users in the evening than in the daytime. But the height of your desktop traffic is working hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
And how does the iPad, like, where does iPad fall? Does the iPad fall
It's
into?
very, very small. It's there, and it's definitely more volatile than mobile and desktop traffic. You can switch from month to month where you'll see a huge decline and then you'll see some increases, but it remains holding on, but a very, very small amount of traffic, less than 10% usually, is on a tablet.
Interesting. Now, Molly, you talked about the pages that people are looking at, number of pages, etc. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So what are you seeing as far as average number of pages that someone is looking at? And again, I'm sure it's going to vary significantly by which stage they're in.
Yes. So the overall average, and that's really the numbers that I am providing when it comes to benchmarking, is just an overall average from big builders to small builders, East Coast, West Coast, and everything in between, top of funnel, bottom funnel. This is just the middle ground, the total average. It's about a little more than 3 pages, which makes sense if you think about it, because somebody might come in through an advertising funnel and land on a community, right? And they're looking at that community page, and then they find a plan that they're interested in. So they go to the plan page and they check out the plan, and then they see that there's a quick move in home available. So then they maybe go look at a spec. Or conversely, they land on a community and they look at maybe 2 plans that they're interested in. So that's showing some interest in moving around and looking at different areas on the website. And again, these are all caveated with the type of funnel, where they are in the funnel and the traffic, and the type of website you design. So Homefinity is really designed with a builder in mind, and we have it all set up with that location, plan, and spec mentality. But there was a trend 5 or 6 years ago where your website was all one page. So
Yeah.
that's obviously, you're not going to go to 3 pages if your website was designed like that. So it can vary and be a little bit different, but that's the average.
Interesting. So, with the 3 pages, do you have an idea for what is the most popular page? Because again, builders love to talk about themselves, all the awards we won, all the escalates we got, and all this and that. So, is that something people are looking at?
So they location, plan, and spec pages are the most popular over all pages. And then we have a proprietary marketing product called Follow, which essentially turns your locations, your plans, and your specs into a product catalog for both Facebook and Google. And you know how if you shop, if you go to the Nordstrom website and you look at a pair of shoes and you like them, but you don't buy them, and then you get ads on Facebook that show you not only those shoes, but like 12 other things that they think you might like. So
Hmm.
that's what our Follow product does. And overwhelmingly, the plans perform the best, and it's because they have the prettiest pictures.
Hmm.
So a lot of times a location, it pulls the imagery from your website. And a lot of times the main picture of a location will be the community entrance, the sign. And then specs, a lot of times it's in progress homes. So they're not the best looking pictures of a home, but plans are always shiny, pretty, polished, beautiful homes. And so those definitely get the most amount of play and interest when we are looking at the impression data or click data.
So I guess the big lesson from this is that you really got to make sure you have lots of beautiful photography on your website, right? People are visual. I mean, if you think about the how we consume information and how much faster we can consume an image versus written words, um, I mean, it's a must. So beautiful photography, not something taken on your iPhone on your website. You gotta have professional photography. Would you agree with
Yes,
that?
yes, yes. I can't tell you how many times I have heard builders say, "Oh, I really like the look of this website," and we maybe will come back with a mock-up and we'll have subbed in their pictures, and they'll say, "This isn't at all what I wanted," and we're like, "Well, I mean, you got to have the photography. So if you got to like, there's a reason that that stuff is so pretty and so engaging and." Like I'm captivated by it, right? Like I stop my scroll when there's a pretty house in my feed.
Oh
It's,
yes.
you want it to look, you want to put your best foot forward.
Absolutely. Now, speaking about putting your best foot forward, um, I'm sure you obviously see a lot of websites when you talk to potential clients. What do you typically see that builders are now kind of like, I guess, realizing that okay, this is really important and we're doing this, and you're glad to see that this is something they're doing well versus like the most of an area of improvement, I guess. What are we doing well and what we're not doing so well?
So, what I am most excited about recently is how builders responded in the pandemic. They really adopted technology that we had all been talking about and thinking about, but not fully using. And Do You Convert just came out with a statistic from 2020 that 51% of sales were attributable to online sales counselors in 2020, which is amazing. And 5 years ago, online sales counselors weren't fully adopted. And now this year, all of a sudden, we have online sales counselors, the clicking to call, clicks to chat. We have people who link their chats with Facebook and they have Facebook Messenger conversations. We have Calendly appointments. We have people who we instituted the ability to use FaceTime and to schedule it so that the builder or the sales rep wasn't getting a FaceTime call when they weren't prepared to get a FaceTime call. And they engaged in it and they're happy to do it and give these virtual tours, and really just the overall embracing of that forward momentum and that technology has been amazing to see in the last year.
Hmm. Absolutely. And where do you see the most improvement needed? What kind of like makes you cringe when you see?
um the thing that makes me cringe the most is when I see people running ads on Facebook and or Google that are not properly tracked, and then on the back end in the analytics they're tracking goals that are kind of not important, like they made time on site a goal, but that's not really what you want to measure. We feel very strongly that you want to measure leads. Leads are the equivalent of your e-commerce product. If you're on an e-commerce Google Analytics site, they tell you the revenue, they tell you how many products you've sold. That's what you care about. And we're not currently selling homes online fully yet. So what you really care about, what you want to be tracking is the leads. So that is probably my number one thing that I see all too often. Builders get caught up in the pretty of an advertising campaign and don't focus on the guts of the campaign and the behind the scenes. And that's what's the most important, especially with the AI that Facebook and Google have to offer. The strategy behind it, the rationale, the way that you're targeting, the money that can be wasted on Google so easily is super frustrating to see that they are swayed by the pretty picture and not by the guts of the campaign, because the guts of the campaign are what is making it work.
Mm-hmm. And so we already talked about the leads and what's converting right now. So I think again it goes back to knowing your customer and giving not making assumptions, right? Like you may assume that okay, a lot of my buyers are millennials, so they're all going to want to chat, but that may not be the case. So it's the giving that variety and the option that hey, if I'm more comfortable just clicking that call button and I want to have a quick conversation with somebody versus engaging in the chat versus actually submitting my information. So you really want to make sure that you are providing those different avenues to your potential buyers so that they feel comfortable engaging with you, and getting them engaged is the end goal, as we talked. Now, speaking of time on site, I know you said that it's not the most important thing, but what are you seeing in terms of averages?
So the average time on site is about 3 minutes and 15 seconds, which is a fair amount of time if you think about it. And again, accounts for that 3 pages per session because you're on each page then for roughly a minute digesting the information. And again, you want to think about this in terms of how easy is it to find your information? Because if you see a really high time on site, your first instinct might be, well, these are good numbers. They're spending 9 minutes on my site. That's wonderful. But it really might be because they're having trouble finding what they're looking for. So there's a fine line between wanting people to be on your site for a decent amount of time and wanting to make sure that you're giving them what they want and they can find it in an easy and logical way. So these things also all go back to your Facebook and your Google AI because they're so tied in with this machine learning now. Both Facebook and Google look at a user's behavior on your website and use it to judge the quality of your advertising as it pertains to the quality of your website. So if they see people struggling to find what they're looking for, they'll demark your ads. Your ads won't get shown as much, your costs go up, your conversion rates go down. So it's important to pay attention and make sure that your information is presented in an easily digestible and user-friendly way.
So speaking of the bounce rate, so what are we looking for as far as how many people you want to stay on your site versus maybe get out immediately? And
So we go high with our bounce rate. We say 60% or lower. And we go high with our bounce rate because again, it is that that number in particular really bounces. It really changes with the funnel, with the level of the funnel. So the higher up on the funnel, the higher your bounce rate's going to be. And it's not uncommon to see a Google display campaign, which is like your billboard basically, to have an 80% bounce rate, sometimes even higher. But then when you get down to your Google search traffic, which is much more qualified, you're more likely to see bounce rates under 50%. So 60% is really what we call the average, because if you send a lot of top of funnel traffic, it'll mess with the overall average of your site. So 60% or less.
mm-hmm. Great. And I know this is a loaded question because I think, I know the answer to that is that it's going to depend on your audience, but I'm going to ask anyway. So you obviously do a lot of different campaigns, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, and I know LinkedIn is becoming a popular platform too, as well as Google AdWords, etc. So for home builders who are maybe not doing any advertising right now as far as digital advertising, where do you think it's wise to kind of get started, maybe to spend some of the money? Where do you see the most return on your investment when it comes to digital ads?
So you're right. It does depend. We advertise almost entirely between Facebook and Google because Google allows you with their display to cover basically anything. So instead of going to a local newspaper and buying a digital ad from a local newspaper, you can get ad space on that local newspaper's website through Google, and you get it for a much cheaper price. So Facebook gives you the ability to target all levels of your funnel. You really see top, middle, and bottom funnel. Mostly middle and top of funnel, with a little bit of bottom funnel there. And you can get it for a really inexpensive cost per click. So we always say Facebook is a great place to be, but more importantly is being on Google. We lead with Google, and then we follow with Facebook, and we always suggest both. But if you have to choose just one, we go with Google, and we go with Google search, because that is going to be a more qualified, already searching lead. So we're much more likely. It'll be expensive. The cost per click in search is expensive, but you are more likely to get leads from that. However, if you want a holistic campaign where you're really going top, middle, bottom, you want to be on multiple places, and have multiple different campaigns going.
Mhm. Great. And just to kind of wrap up our conversation, is there anything that you guys are doing differently this year going forward, knowing that there's been some changes to privacy laws and with the new OS and the even on Facebook, the settings that you can choose.
Yep.
So have you like I guess what are you guys doing differently as an ad agency, knowing that we may not be able to track some of those things or follow people as we could in the past?
So honestly, the changes are already here. They have been here. The biggest change is Safari not tracking. So we aren't able to really draw that full picture like we used to be able to, and say, oh, look, they came from Facebook and they went here and here. We do lose some of that, especially like we were talking earlier about somebody who might go from their desktop to their phone and back again. We do lose some of that information, but we make it possible for people to register on our websites. We provide things like that where we're doing first party tracking, which is still totally acceptable. So we have the ability to collect that data. We can use Facebook's offline data sets to upload that information from our CRM so that they can track performance that way. Second, Facebook has announced something called their conversion API, which they talked about, I think it was like 2 years ago when Megan and Dennis flew out to Facebook, and they introduced the conversion API then. So we have been in talks with Facebook for the last 2 years about how that's going to be implemented and when it's going to be released and available and all of that. So from the Facebook side, that's kind of taken care of, because we have been thinking about it proactively for the last 2 years. And then on the Google side, they haven't yet changed anything, so we're still safe in Google's land, and they're testing something called Flock, Federated Location something or other. I can't remember what it is, but it's essentially disguising one person's information in a group of people. And there's some wishy-washy about the performance. Depends on who you ask on how reliable it is, but that's being tested. So we are always reading, staying on top of, learning, and implementing tactics well before they're actually a concern, because that's our job.
Mhm.
So we try to really stay on top of that.
Yes, yes, and I think for a lot of my listeners, this is kind of probably going to go a lot over their heads what we talked about as far as the privacy and everything, getting really nitty gritty there. But basically, the big picture is that there's been a lot of conversations about increasing the privacy. So when you go on a website, not being able to necessarily track you, and when you go from one website to the other website. And so there's been some conversations for and against. And I think the most that we hear right now that's been popular in the news is the fight between the Facebook and Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of where they stand on that. So what's your take on that? And I guess not to get political or anything, but whose side are you on, or
So I'm on the
what do you
side of
think?
marketing. Track me all day long. I'm totally down with that. I really don't care. I actually really like getting personalized, targeted ads. But in all reality, the whole concept is data privacy, is making the process of collecting our information more transparent. Facebook is free because they make money from us. We are the product, right? So what are they collecting from us and how much information do they have? And by the way, Facebook is like a false flag because Google has way more information on us than Facebook could ever dream. So it's at the end of the day, I understand wanting to make it more transparent and understandable to people. But I honestly don't think it's going to be as drastic as everyone is proclaiming it's going to be, because it's really not that big a deal. I mean, yes, they're collecting information. Yes, they're going to tell us now what information they're collecting. And yes, people are going to opt out of that collection. But I don't think that it is going to be so much that like suddenly the internet turns off tomorrow and they no longer have any data on us. Like, I don't believe that that's going to be the case. So I think we will ultimately find a happy medium between massive amounts of data collection and the prolific growth of Facebook and Google and the privacy that we all are searching for and asking for these days.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they hear those conversations about the privacy, like it's realizing that, okay, like you've been getting ads served to you based on the information that they have on you. So, it's already out there. So now as a consumer, yeah, you may be able to opt out of some of that, but it's not going to mean that you're not going to get less ads. It just means that the ads you're going to see may not be relevant to you. And so I agree with you as far as there's definitely a balance between how much of my personal information I want them to have. But at the same time, if I'm going to be seeing ads, I'd rather see cute shoes and,
Right?
things
Wouldn't you
that
rather be like,
actually,
oh, they know me too well?
yeah, exactly. To make an easier buying decision versus just some random stuff that is not applicable to me. So, um,
Right.
yeah,
And it works to your advantage because, like, in the home building, in the home buying process, I'm looking at buying a home. I go on one website, Facebook and Google figure out that I'm looking at buying a home, and then they show me ads for other builders and maybe introduce me to a brand that I've not heard of before and open my eyes. So, as a consumer, I want that. I want to be able to have the choice. So, it can work in your favor.
I agree with you, Molly. Well, thank you so very much for being on today. I think this is a fascinating look at what's going on with builder websites, because we know that 99.99% of people start their home search online. So it's really important to understand this data and what you can do to improve your conversions along the way, because at the end of the day, remember, it's not how pretty your website, but is it converting, is it producing the leads for you? Now, Molly, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and get more information, or if they wanted to get their hands on this report on the benchmark study, where can we get this?
So the report is published at ONeilInteractive.com. We also broadcast every other Friday on Facebook Live. We have a show called Homefinity and Beyond, and the benchmark report is available there. It's facebook.com/ONeil Interactive/live. So you can see the thing there, but ONeilInteractive.com will give you the written benchmark report with these numbers in it. And then if you wanted to reach out to me, Molly at ONeilInteractive.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so very much, Molly, for being a guest. I had such a great time uh, talking to you, and it really shows how well you know your stuff. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. This was really fun. I could talk shop all day long, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.